Patch 2 Danes are very similar to Patch 1 Danes, price reductions across the board. However, Elite Nordic Spears and Nordic Spearmasters now have a 30 bonus against large, but so do the cheaper Germanic Spearmen. But still, Elite Nordic Spearmen still a good anti-cavalry unit. The Nordic band now cost 100, which is glorious. They are great fun bringing. And for the Chosen Warriors, their price reduction is so huge that it's worth mentioning. Now at 750. The morale on these guys means they will fight to the death. Berserkers also got a massive price reduction. Still very questionable unit to bring. Bow infantry at 100. Nordic hurlers at 150. Cheap thrall skirmishers. It's almost like they're worth bringing now, and they can be very deadly used against enemy cavalry and lightly armored enemy infantry units. And since the Nordic, this is a bit. The Nordic horse raiders are of course not on the level of Germanic horsemen, and the Nordic mounted are not either. Very low armor, very low health. But the Nordic horse lords at 700 are a very interesting unit. Because they have the scare trait, because they have precursors and unbreakable, they can stay in the fight for an exceedingly long time. And if you give these guys a few upgrades, Noble Alani cavalry is still going to be too much to handle for the Nordic horse lords. But the Nordic horse lords just got a ninja buff because, well, not meant to say an indirect buff, because the Germanic horsemen were nerfed. Now the Nordic horse lords are comparatively stronger than they were, at least compared to the upgraded noble Germanics. Nordic raiders still useless, of course. No Parthian shot. Warhounds still at 100. So the Dane army hasn't gotten too many changes done to it, and I think any Dane army that doesn't bring at least 6 Nordic horse lords now is a foolish Dane army. But you can do some fun things with the Dane army now, and because things have gotten cheaper, you can, for example, go super rush heavy Nordic axe warriors. The cheap Nordic warlord general. You don't have a cavalry option, of course, which is understandable as a Nordic faction. And then you can, for example, bring in some. You don't have too many good cavalry options, which of course is a problem. But let's say that there's a gentleman's agreement of having only 6 cavalry units in this particular game. So the Nordic axe warriors can do a lot of damage and support cavalry fights. The Nordic band is a very interesting unit because you can force enemy. Bringing 6 is something that I like to do, and the reason why is because they allow you to control. They allow you to control cavalry movement quite well, and they can throw a precursor javelin volley at an enemy cavalry unit and do a lot of damage to it. They also, and that is something that many cavalry units will want to avoid, getting hit by a precursor volley. So they can sort of control how the enemy cavalry moves a bit, and if they get charged, which a lot of people will do, it opens the enemy cavalry up to being counter charged. So as a screen, these units are superb. Bringing 6, I like to do it, but it might be a bit overkill. Hirdmen are very good at holding the center, especially when using shield wall. So with a Nordic faction like this, bringing a good mix of Hirdmen and shock cavalry, shock infantry, together with Nordic band, I think is a lot of fun. Now there are several ways a Dane army can work. This is just one of them that I've found to be fairly decent. The main thing is always going to be the strong Nordic horse lords supported by decent infantry. So the Danes, not a top tier faction by any means. The Nordic horse lords sort of make them a mid tier faction, but the problem is lacking any kind of mid tier cavalry options makes the Danes a very marginal faction. Strength and honor.